13, verses 1 through 3. And this week and next week are the passages on love, and today's the more excellent way. Next week is on the greatest of these is love. But as we get going, let's start in prayer, if you could. Father God, we thank you so much for the days you give us. We thank you for the chance we have to come together and study your word. Father, we just thank you for the minds that you've given us that allows us to make choices, that allows us to look at your word and understand it. So now, Father, we just ask you'll bless this study, be with us, watch over us. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, 12 to 14, or in chapters 12 through 14, rather, Paul talks a lot about spiritual gifts. In 12, he describes the gifts. In 13, he reveals how long they last. And in 14, he's talking about using them. But in this section of the study, he's talking about love and the fact that the gifts are worthless without love. Let's use the example of teaching and preaching. How would that be a useless gift if you don't have love to go with it? You won't practice it, and when people see that, you've got no effect. What else?
I mean, they've got lots of studies on college professors that are just absolute jerks. You know, and those huge colleges that have 300 kids in a room, and they're like, "You're a number, I don't care," and the TAs are actually getting to get through. I mean, they just have shown that that's just a very awful way to do education.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a certain amount of, if I don't care about you and you don't care about me, I don't care about learning from you. I mean, that's Maslow's hierarchy right away.
And if you don't have the passion for the topic, they feel that right away. How?
Well, maybe I'm a little crazy on this,
Mm.
but probably. But I've always thought about the fact that when you look at this in a comparison of faith and hope and love, the faith is really in this life. Once you get to eternity, you don't need faith. And hope, once you've already achieved that, it ends. But love goes from eternity to eternity. It just continues. And so I've always looked at it as when you're looking at the scope, it's just forever.
So, in this discussion tonight, he's going to propose a more excellent way of loving. He wants them to desire the better gifts, because it does say that there's some gifts that are more desirable than others. None less important, none less necessary for the work of the church. But then he goes on in 1 through 13 here talking about that there's a more excellent way of living, the more excellent way of sharing your beliefs, the more excellent way of teaching. It involves love. So let's, someone, if you would, I think I've got the verses here. Nope. Maybe. Nope. Let's just read them. Chapter 13, 1 through 13, someone. Okay, Alice?
1 through 13.
Yes, please.
1 Corinthians 13. If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. And if I give all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I surrender my body to be burned, but do not have love, it profits me nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, it is not
So let's look at a couple of these before we kind of go on down. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but I don't have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Why is that?
Well, both of the things that he uses examples here are, they make noise because they're just empty.
Okay.
You know, so the comparison is that if you don't have this, you're just empty.
Okay. What else? Have you ever been in a place where there's just so much noise that you couldn't hear anything? And you hear a lot of noise. With my hearing, that's what fellowship after church sounds like a lot of times.
We used to see a empty wagon make a lot of noise.
There you go. If you've ever ridden in a wagon,
So we need to quiet down.
yeah. Last night we were at a baseball game or a softball game, the badge on badge, the firemen and the police were playing. And I'm not going to say my grandson talks a lot, Liam, but Liam talks a lot, more than me. And so I'm trying to watch the game, and Liam keeps moving to stand right in front of me and talking nonstop. And I'm like, shut up, Liam, move. Well, I didn't start with shut up, but it got there. And I would shove him out of the way, and it wouldn't be 2 seconds he's back in front of me. But I want to say, finally he said, you know I still love you, though. I said, love has got nothing to do with your mouth running nonstop and you standing in front of the ball game. Now move. And then he'd say, well, what's the score? How would I know? You won't shut up. And then somebody called me. I don't know. Some woman called me and stayed on the phone for a half hour. No.
It's an emergency.
Karen called me for an emergency from Rockford to help her. And I'm like, I'm surrounded by cops, but ain't none of us going to help you. 30 cops sitting all around me, but I couldn't help her. But no. You are so welcome. Only for you, just because it popped up Harbach. Now, you know, you can have all this noise with no clarity. Or you can have clarity and then people understand what you're saying. And that's what he's talking about here. He goes on, prophecy's no good if there's no understanding. You know, without love, there's no interpretation of the prophecy that makes sense. Give all your possessions away. And we've seen a lot of rich people that give a lot of money away, but then you look at them as people and they're horrible people. And so the gift loses a lot. I like verse 11. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, think like a child, reason like a child. When I became a man, I did away with childish things. If you think about kids and their communication, Xerxes tonight has been yelling at me every time he walks by me. Ah! Well, I don't know what that means. Not too worried about what it means. Well, okay, if that's what it means. As adults, we try to use some clarity in our communication. And so love is that clarity for us when we mature into love. If you think about times you're talking to somebody or at somebody, when love's involved, even if it's a disagreement, you can get past it. When it's bullying, when it's just you having to have your way, when there's no love, it's hard to get past that. It really is. And by the way, verse 12, I use a lot in funerals because Paul talks about the fact that right now it's dimly. Later on, I will know fully just as I also have been fully known. I use that verse a lot because that verse tells me we will know and understand people on a whole new level in heaven, which is a wonderful thing. Okay, so anyway. So he describes it here. He says one, love is necessary in the exercise of spiritual gifts, and we've kind of talked about that. But it's also involved in the exercise of great sacrifice. How is it necessary in sacrifice? Again, we'll go back to verse 3 there. If I give all my possessions to feed the poor and I surrender my body to be burned, but I don't have love, it profits me nothing. So why is love so important there for sacrifice? Give me a New Testament story. Go ahead.
I don't have a New Testament story. But
That's all right.
It's your motivation. Why are you doing it in the first place? Tax break?
Mhm. If you got your tax break, that's all the value you get out of that gift, isn't it? If that's your only motivation. So give me there's a couple examples that pop right in my head right away. I'll forget them by the time you say which were they, but what are a couple of the stories in the New Testament that relate to sacrifice without love? Yeah. We gave everything to God. No, you didn't. Zap. What's another one? Okay, the talents, afraid to use what God gave you. That's the opposite of making the sacrifice, but it's still the same point. What's another one? How about the widow?
Giving everything she has, 2 pence.
When other people were making a show of dropping their coins in loudly into the box, she gave all that she had. And what was the most valuable gift that day? All that she had.
Her faith.
Yeah, her faith. And the dollar amount doesn't matter. If we had a congregation full of people that all gave to the best of their ability with love, even if it was less dollars than are coming into the actual plate now, I think we would fare better. I think we would see more return on that monetary gift. I think we would see more ability with it. Yeah, we have to pay the bills and all that. But I truly believe that when we give to God and our heart is fully in it, He's going to give it back overflowing. I believe that when He said it. I told you the story about one of my great-great-grandfathers who owned a mill. And you know, millers were allowed to keep a percentage of everything they milled, and that's how they got paid. And then they would sell flour, cornmeal, and wheat flour and all that. And he had a rule that while every other miller in town took 10%, he gave you yours back and he only kept 5%. And they said one of the things that millers did a lot of times is the sweepings, they wouldn't clean the floor. They'd keep that for themselves and then they'd bag that and sell it. He would make sure that he cleaned up everything that was yours and you got your full share. As a result, he was always slam busy, couldn't take care of the cut. Why? Because he was giving, they saw that he was giving more value added than others were. You know, the old baker's dozen, that's the same philosophy, giving you more than you actually paid for. People see that. And so same thing here, we give to God more. With the right attitude, it goes a lot further. Now, let's apply that to us today. Without love, any gift you have is of no value. And I'm telling you, the youngest age group in the church will see that when it comes to teaching. If you don't want to be in there, if you dread it, they feel it. And I think they act worse. Same thing with if you're shaking hands and hugging people, but only your friends, visitors, others notice that. But if you're reaching out to everyone, then they notice it. And by the way, I've said before, as much as you can, I really encourage you to touch people. Even if it's as little as saying, I'm so glad you're here today. You know, just a hand on the shoulder. And even if you don't have time to visit with somebody. Well, I was on my way to do something, and Kayla was standing there, and I went by and squeezed her hand. It says loads when you do it with, and she knows I meant it. But I was trying to do something else. I didn't have time to stop and chat then. People know when you care, and even if you don't have time to do anything more than just a touch, it is so incredibly important. And people know if it's sincere or not. So someone turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1. Let's read that. Or you can read it up there because I typed it for you. But 1 Corinthians 8, 1. Without love, how is obtained knowledge hurtful? 1 Corinthians 8, 1. Someone. How you're looking at it steadfastly.
Okay. Now concerning food offered to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. This knowledge puffs up, but love builds up.
So we all have knowledge about food sacrificed for idols, and when he's talking to them, he is basically saying that what? About the food. What do they know about that food sacrificed to idols? No, but they have knowledge. They have scriptural knowledge, spiritual knowledge here. So what Paul is saying is, it means nothing. Clearly he had taught that, or someone had taught that. It means nothing. Now, it's come back later, and they're arguing about it. So Paul says, look, if your knowledge is making you conceited, so what was the person doing who had the knowledge and is conceited with it? Think it through. What were they clearly doing that Paul says they're being conceited?
You got to put up my own insurance?
Sure.
I got the goods, man.
Okay. In other words, I know it doesn't matter, and just because you don't like it doesn't matter. I'm getting the discount. You know, hey, they got ribeyes for half price. I'm getting one. I don't care about you. That makes you conceited. But even if you buy that steak, you know, and you take it home, but you don't say anything about it, you don't rub it in anybody's face, then it can be edifying. But also using discretion and saying, you know, we live in Corinth, which is about 2 square acres. I think I'll just skip the meat deal. And then they really know that you care about them because they've heard you have that discussion that should we, shouldn't we, is it okay, is it not? And you know part of your congregation is still saying, I got a problem with this. Robert?
I was going to say that right now, Zeke and Xander have a discussion a lot because Zeke says things that are completely wrong all the time with complete confidence. And Xander tries to tell him, no, that's not right. And Zeke's just like, no, that's completely right. And they'll bicker back and forth. And I'm just like, Xander, stop. You're not going to change his mind. Just let him believe what he wants to believe right now. It's not important. What you're arguing about is not important at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there is a certain amount of, that's what the knowledge makes one conceited. I mean, Xander knows he is 100% right. I don't know what Zeke actually thinks. I think he's trying to annoy his brother, but,
That's a given.
But at the end of the day, that knowledge has, you know, being the person that is clearly right in that conversation wasn't important. You know, it's not a life or death issue. It's not somebody, you know, it's just like not important to sit there and bicker about it back and forth when you're just someone's yelling no, one other person's yelling yes.
Without love, service rendered is not pleasing to God. So here's the deal. If your attitude's wrong, and sometimes we have to do things even when we don't want to, but I mean, if your attitude is really wrong, here's the problem. Even if no one else knows your attitude was wrong, fill in the blank. God knows. And so your service is without value at that point. And you know. Your service is without value at that point. One time, one of the front desk people who I know because Declan and Fiona both went to school with her kids, and she came in. She goes, you know, other preachers come to visit people, and they're wearing slacks and ties and all. I said, yeah, that's true. But if I get a call last minute, do I go to the hospital just as I am, or do I not go to the hospital because I'm not clean enough? And I literally, I think we were doing Julie's roof, and I had tar on my knees from doing the roof up there, and I stunk because it was hot, and I got a call, we're loading somebody on the chopper, they want you here, they won't leave until you come and pray with them. And so I rushed to the hospital, and the security guard wouldn't let me up on the helipad. And so Barb Undersea still worked there then. So I said, Barb, they won't let me up. He's a preacher, let him up there. And the guy went, okay. You know, got the wrinkled nose. And what we look like, what we sound like, doesn't matter. It's what our heart is. And by the way, that person who is not a Christian, I had just visited them in the ER on one of my rounds. Earlier that morning, I think, first thing, they wound up becoming a Christian because I came when they asked, regardless. And that's where we don't always see the end result, but you need to.
I completely agree with your heart needing to be in it, but there's also a certain amount of, there are times you have to fake it till you make it, because if you say no just because your heart's not in the right place,
No, I agree with that, but there's a difference. There's a difference, I believe, in it being inconvenient and you doing it anyway, bad timing, whatever. Or you're just tired. You are just flat worn out, and you just got home, got your shoes off, your feet up, and supper on the table, and all of a sudden you get a phone call. There's the inconvenience that can be irritating just because, it just is. And then there's a really bad attitude, a wrong attitude. And I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I'm saying we need to understand the difference in am I feeling rushed, harried, inconvenienced, or am I truly saying, I don't want to help these people? What have they ever done for me? Over here and then over there.
Just over the last week of doing some volunteer work, school's almost on. There's some classrooms that need painted. And it's been a big endeavor. And towards the first of it, basically, okay, let's just get together. They didn't get it. But there's the yammering here, and the negatory there, and I don't know why you're doing this, and you sort of gotta do that. And I don't buy it. I just make that choice.
Mm.
Move on from there. But those types of attitudes, when you're doing something that realistically has to be done, and this is a small school, it's like a school, doesn't have funds growing out of here, so it's all tuition based. A little bit of money's from here and there. You go in, and I'm not blowing my own horn here or anything, it's just like, okay, there's something that has to be done, let's go ahead and do it, and let's do it as efficiently as possible. And do a good job, too.
Yeah.
I love to bake, and I love to do bread. And yet there are two kinds of breads, right? If you do a tortilla, it is solid, and when you put it on there, it stays flat. But if you take that same bread and make it into a pita, and you put yeast in it, and you throw it in the oven to bake, it puffs up like a balloon, but it's hollow. There's nothing inside.
I know there's a point here.
It is nothing inside, because it's just air. And that's what this is comparing us to is are we being puffed up where there's just really not any nourishment there or anything to help somebody grow.
All right, so let's look at the positive qualities. So first, it suffers wrong. It endures slights and wrongs patiently and long like God himself. How long has God put up with bad attitudes?
Since the beginning.
Roughly 10,000 years, right?
A2.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always hoped Adam and Eve held out for a little while, but not so sure they did. But I've always hoped that they lived there like 1,000 years before they messed up. I don't know. Just, you hope the best out of mankind.
Technically, being upset is not a sin. So they could have had disagreements.
I get.
Not sin in the garden.
Love is kind, obliging and willing to help. Again, it's about that attitude. Are you willing to help somebody, or are you having to help somebody? And again, sometimes they run together. So, Paul gives us two here. Love suffers long and it's kind. Hopefully, you figured out in your marriage relationships how to suffer long. I've been married 40. No, I'm not going to go down that road. No, I don't mean you've been suffering for a long time. Suffer long. I should have known where y'all the wives' heads went. But, and it's kind. Without that ability to overlook some things, and without that ability to be kind even when it's not on top of your list right at that moment, we have to do it. Now, I want to go back to something Bob did say. This just came back in my head, and that is that the ability to say no. Sometimes we very lovingly need to say no for different reasons. One of the things that Allison said, my career came first, those first 10, 15 years of my military career, and I could not say no. I didn't have the opportunity, option. Later on, when I was the boss and running things, my employees did not love the fact that I got every Christmas and New Year's off. But I lovingly told them, for the last 10 years, I didn't take a Christmas off or a New Year's. I didn't take vacations. I couldn't. We were at war. I had to do what I had to do. Now I can, and because you're going to work and answer the phones those days. You're going to do it. And someday you'll be the boss, and it'll be great. Because at some point, I realized I have the choice here, so why should I hurt my family? Over and over again. And had I gotten a call from my boss, obviously I'd have gone to work. So the same in the church. You can be the one that never says no, and you will burn yourself out. Then your attitude will go in the toilet, and it will be bad. So we all need a break. We all need to rest. We all need to do something for others. I remember we've been here about 10 years, and I hadn't taken a lot of vacation time off, and never Sundays if I could help it. And Allison one day came up to me, and she just said, she'd been asking me about a vacation, and I said, well, we'll get to it. And she came up to me and she said, okay, here's the deal. I'm getting ready to get online and buy tickets to Florida. You can come with me or not. I've already got the rooms reserved on the beach. What are you going to do? I'm calling Bruce. I'm taking a vacation. I'm not going to sit here. Because, that's one of those where it's time to say, I'm going to skip a Sunday here or I'm going to lose a wife. And by the way, you can. Tom Holland, some of you have been in the church a long time, know the name Tom Holland. Phenomenal song leader, great preacher, good teacher when I was at Lipscomb. Tom served the Lord 40, 50 years in the pulpit. And when he finally retired, and he never missed, and he was every gospel meeting anybody asked, when he retired, his wife said, I'm getting a divorce. Why? Because you haven't had time for me all these years, and the ministry was important. So important I stayed with you, but you're out of the ministry, and you don't care about me, didn't care then, I'm done. I think they worked it out. I don't know. I haven't talked to either. I was really good friends with his son and daughter, but it's one of those college friendships that just kind of went away after we both moved away. All of us did. But, you can destroy your spiritual life trying to be so spiritual. Hope you follow that. Don't take it wrong. I'm not saying you get to every fifth Sunday you get to sit home, and watch TV, but I'm saying you can overdo your goodness to other people to the detriment of your own self and your own family. We need to be balanced people. That's why we say everything can be good, everything can be a sin. You just have to measure it. Okay. But now, you notice one thing about Paul here? 2 things are good, 8 of them are negatives. Now let's look at the negatives. 1, love does not envy. What's it mean? How does not being envious in the body of Christ work?
You're happy for a person who gains. You're happy that they're acquiring things that they wanted all their time. You're not jealous if they have it, so you're not envious. They got a new car, like a PT Cruiser with a convertible, all those kind of things. I always wanted. But I'm not.
You can have it.
No. But I think that is so good. But some folks are naturally envious or jealous, and that's their human trait, and they need to get a grip on it. Because love is not envious. It's not wanting you to have this or that, only if they can have it too.
Have you known people that were always jealous of everybody else?
Yes.
Yeah, most of the people that I've known, godly people that were very wealthy, most people didn't know how wealthy they were. Because as Christians, they did their thing and didn't run around bragging about it. But regardless of whether everyone knew that they were super wealthy or not, it's not about that in the church. And so, like you say, we should be happy for someone that does well.
We go to money, but it goes to other things.
It goes to
I
everything.
mean,
She brought up money.
yeah, I know. Well,
She did it.
sure, she was not the only one, but it's mean girl friendships. When, you know, one
Oh,
of your
mean
friends,
girl.
when one of your friends says, "Yeah, I'm really happy for you," and then turns around and immediately says, "She does not deserve that. I deserve that." Whatever happens to her, you know, could be something at work, could be
A promotion.
yeah, promotion. It could
You do
be
know that there's no such word as mean boy. It's only mean girl. Just saying.
Because girls are.
Drama follows the word girls, punching follows the word boys.
Yeah.
What does it mean that love does not parade itself?
I think that fits more into what you were saying right before my comment of, you know, a lot of people that die rich in the church, you never knew exactly how rich they are. A lot in the world, we know exactly how rich some people are because they make sure people know how rich they are. And that's what parading is. I mean, not to go to money, you can parade other things. Keith Lancaster, I brought up him before. He is an excellent song leader, great song leader from the church, and paraded it so much that he started his own church that forgot the other four aspects of.
You forgot he was singing praise to God. He started singing praise to Keith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
the gospel, and I mean, he's still a cappella, and I'm assuming he still follows most of what Church of Christ is. But, you know, the sermon is almost nothing. It's all about singing and feeling good about singing, and everyone feeling good about him singing.
Mhm.
And so it's, that's parading that would be a non-money example.
What is the difference then between love doesn't parade and love is not puffed up?
But
Difference in parade and puffed up, huh?
I was repeating what you said for the non-listening voice over there.
Yeah, what's the difference in love does not parade versus love is not puffed up?
I think they're one and the same,
They can be.
because I'm trying to teach the kids values, but they don't always do a good job. So, they'll be talking about how wonderful they are and what they do and the things they have and how good they are at this or that or whatever. And I say, you know, there's a difference between conceit and convinced, or having your abilities. I said, one, you tell everybody what you're qualified for and how great you are, or you wait until somebody else compliments you. I said, you have to decipher what matters the most to you. And so, they're still telling me that they're good at it.
Rod?
When you parade yourself, you're doing it for the benefit of other people, so that they can see what you're doing or what you've got going, or, you know. And when you're puffed up, this is all about you. Yeah, it's all about you. It's not so much about the other one. Look how good I am. I see that as personally as a main difference.
And that goes
You
to,
can do the same,
yes,
and you can do both, actually.
yes.
But they are different.
Well, it goes to Bob's analogy there. Keith Lancaster, incredible voice, good musician. Keith made a lot of money, and as far as I know, he didn't parade the money around, but he was doing pretty good. But when everyone started telling him how good he was, that's when the puffed up came, and then the puffed up and the parade marry each other, and you start your own church. And in fact, he named his own church the Church of the Rising Sun.
I think it's attitude versus action. You can be puffed up about it and not parading it, but then the action is when you're showing off for people. You already have that attitude, you're puffed up about it.
So it can be one, both, either, or. Okay, then we're moving on. One last one on this.
You used to be a scuba diver, and you see blowfish. They just kind of make themselves bigger than they really are.
I've seen more of them out of the water than I've seen in the water.
I thought he was about to say you used to pray around. I really did.
I walked around church in my skin diving suit just to say, look how good I am at this. No. It doesn't behave rudely. We all know what being rude is. What normally, and I don't know the answer to this necessarily myself, but what normally accompanies rudeness?
Ingenuineness.
Being disingenuous, okay? What else?
Is sarcasm rude?
Can be.
When isn't it?
When it is purely a joke.
Now, you sound like
But usually sarcasm is showing your true feelings but trying to couch it in a joke. Usually when somebody's being sarcastic, they mean what they're saying.
yes.
They just don't want you to know they mean what they, like that.
So they'll go, I was just kidding.
See, he meant shut up, Jeff. I heard it.
Try to hide it with love in your voice so it doesn't
Yeah.
seem so rude.
Sarcasm's hard,
I've
but
said, I don't like the way you talk.
sarcasm's hard because we all tend to use it occasionally, but usually we're really showing our true feelings. We just then want to say, no, that's not what I meant. So we don't want to be rude. We don't want to act ugly, indecent, unseemly, or unbecoming. It thinks no evil. What does that mean?
That's not what that says.
Yes, it does. Okay, we'll go back. So it doesn't seek its own. What's that mean?
Mine says that is, does not insist on its own way.
Have we ever seen that in the church? My way or the highway. Every congregation I've ever been has had those people, and they can tear a church apart, or they can set you back.
I say there's 8 notable ones in histories as to why we have the 8 major branches of Christianity.
Oh. How about, so since my notes are clearly not right, I must have had more ideas when I was typing than I had on my paper. Is not provoked. How can your love keep you from being provoked? Because when I look at the word provoked, it means I'm pushing you into something. So how can we say love is not provoked?
Is it in the sense of, because you love that person or whatever, that whatever they do doesn't set you off?
Getting real close now, Karen. Al.
People know which buttons to push.
But if love is not provoked,
Right, you go, wait a minute. You see what they're doing and why they're, they know why they're doing that. And
So you don't get mad at them.
We need something.
Hal,
Mine-
You're right,
mine
Karen.
renders this as it's not irritable or resentful. And as I get older, I find myself having to deal with being a little more irritable. It's something I have to watch out for.
no, I'm the grumpy old guy in my neighborhood. Last week they kept driving through my yard to get to the fairgrounds. So I put a 2x4 full of nails out there. No, I didn't. I wanted to. I thought about it, but I didn't do it. My wife wouldn't let me. No, love is not provoked says, you may know my buttons, and you may be trying to make me, to get a reaction out of me, a rise out of me, as we used to say. I'm not going to let you do that. And if you are getting to me, I'm going to keep a smile on my face, and you're not going to see it.
It's not I'm not gonna do it. It's that it's the person doing it. I'm starting to get upset over something you're saying, and I'm not going to purposely push your buttons. I'm not provoking it. It's not. I don't think it's about the receiver.
No, it says,
It's about the person. Like
it does not, with love, you do not fly into a rage, which means you're not going to push me to anger. I love you too much. And that's what, you've heard me say this a million times. It's one of my philosophies for kids. I love you too much to let you act this way. I love you too much. And I really like that better than the idea of, as I grew up with, of a spanking. Saying, I love you too much to let you act this way, go sit in the corner till I tell you to get out. As opposed to me using violence to stop your violence or whatever.
I think that is, like Bob was saying, it's about the person who would fly into a rage, or who would get provoked, or who would keep a list of wrongs that were done to them.
It can go both ways.
I think it's talking about that person. It's not provoked, meaning you gotta keep it all in check, or you're not being loving to that person. But that person, if they know what does that, that would be that, but you still have not get provoked.
But if we look at the church, and if you and I have an issue, and you are not going to let me get to you, and if I say I love her so much that I don't care what she's doing that's irritating me, I'm not going to retaliate or what. If we're both loving each other so much that neither one of us are going to provoke or be provoked, that issue goes away.
That's harmony.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Yes, mother.
theoretically,
Guess what, Bob? You're starting here next week.
okay.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
I was saying, theoretically, I love my wife enough that when she gets mad at me for something I did accidental, I don't retaliate. I think that's also well, fine, if you do this, I'm gonna tell you this.
Yeah.
You know?
We'll hit the last two of these while the kids are coming in. It thinks no evil. You don't assume the worst. You're not censorious. You're not disposed to find fault. And you don't rejoice in someone else's sins. And that sounds easy, but it's not, because sometimes don't we love it when somebody we think's too good messes up? Good, they're finally acting human. No, we don't do that. And okay, so Bob will start with some positive qualities next week, because I'm sure he's going to be slow because he doesn't want to talk about women being silent in the church. That's coming up in 2 weeks. So all you ladies plan to talk a lot. Oh, what? I got songs. Okay, come on.
Remember when I said that you would get the song from somebody?
Now we know, you're human.
I didn't even know. I thought until this moment, I didn't realize what I really.
They'll be surprised when they get mine.